Brother Time does not offer medical, financial, or any other kind of professional advice or opinion. This is just us talking about things we want to talk about. So take it with a grain of salt. Let them eat cake. I'm Isaac, 5 of 10.
What's that from? Let them eat cake.
Probably like a bakery or something. So it's funny because it's attributed to Marie Antoinette. Have you heard of her?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, so it was attributed to her, but it probably is not something she said, but that someone brought to her attention that the peasants don't have bread to eat. And so they said that her response was, well, let them eat cake, as in she's like completely oblivious to the plight of the poor and not being like, if they have no bread to eat, they probably have no cake.
Right.
Like yeah, so it just like an insensitivity towards the plight of being poor at the time.
Okay.
But yeah. My favorite protein is gotta be steak right now for my so I'd rather eat steak than cake.
Steak over cake?
Yeah.
What if you took steak and cake and you put them together? That would be really gross. That would be disgusting.
Like
I mean,
cake
is like bread with a very fine crumb, and it's got some more moisture in there.
Worcestershire sauce,
and completely different ingredients. So it's just like bread, just
but a bunch of extra stuff
and some stuff taken away. So some stuff added in, and you change the way you make it completely as well.
Okay, so it's different ingredients. It's made differently. I think it's also eaten differently for most people.
Yeah, you put instead of butter, you put frosting on it, or you could use buttercream frosting. That is,
I just wondered how weird people would look at me if I buttered my cake. I'm sitting there slicing a piece of cake up, and I'm like, "Where's the butter?"
That would be hilarious. You stick it in a toaster.
Jam? Yeah, is there jam or anything to go on this cake?
You want me to eat plain cake? What is this?
Is there salt? Nothing?
Okay, that would be weird. You don't even put salt on bread. Like, why would you?
No.
Well, I'm Josh, 8 of 10, and my... did you say your number?
I said 5 of 10.
Oh, I might have cut you off. My favorite protein is chicken. It is also, I think it's the cheapest protein. If you're talking just meat.
Well, yeah, I mean, rabbit would compete with it.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen it for sale.
If Americans were into that, it would actually be a really good competitor.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, some of the metrics work out in rabbit's favor, like low cost of care and anyways. But how do you like your chicken made?
I like to just grill it in a pan, and it's hard to make that good, but I feel like I've got a good process to make it good, because you could just cook chicken until it's fully cooked, but it's gonna be really boring and probably not taste that great. So I pride myself on being able to make, and it's hard though. It's hard to consistently make.
No kidding.
Good chicken.
Do you do it from frozen, or always like
frozen? Yeah, I mean, I completely thaw it, but yeah.
Well, that's not as hard.
You put a brick of chicken in the pan.
Oh yeah, I do it on hard mode.
Oh wow, yeah, that would be really hard, because it's not gonna cook evenly at all. It's gonna.
Well, over this break, you can tell me how you. Well, actually, do you want to tell how you cook it? Your secret before the break?
Well, I think it would build suspense if I did it after the break.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to think of how I do it wrong during the break. How do you do it?
How do I do what?
The chicken.
That was such a long break. I don't remember what we were talking about. So step one, make sure it's completely thawed if you if you froze it.
Dang it, I've already messed
Yeah, I know, that's kind of key. So like completely thawed, and if you can, you don't want it cold. You want it closer to room temperature, which can be dangerous because you don't want it to stay at room temperature long at all, because it can get really it can make you sick if you leave it at room temperature too long.
Yeah, the bugs multiply on it.
Yeah, but you want to be sure to pound it flat. And this is something I hadn't done for a long time, but then when I started doing it, it actually makes a big difference. First of all, you pound it flat to where it's an even thickness throughout, so it'll cook evenly. It'll also cook a little quicker because if you're pounding it flat, you're making it thinner.
Yeah, it can cook
in doing that. It'll cook through faster and more consistently, so you don't have parts that are raw while other parts are fully cooked. Because the thing about chicken is it's at a perfect amount of cooked for like 2 seconds, and then it goes past that and it's dry. Yeah, and before that, it's completely raw and disgusting, and has like that weird like rubbery noise when you bite into it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so there's that, making sure you pound it flat, season both sides. Another thing you want to actually do, maybe before you season it, is grab some paper towels and just pat that thing dry a few times, because chicken is a very wet meat. It's going to have a lot of moisture on it, and you don't want to steam it when you cook it. And you'll steam it if it's sopping wet with all of its like all of the juices. Yeah, exactly. So you kind of want it to be a little dry on the outside when you put it in the pan.
I think I've heard, I could be wrong, maybe this is a good time to correct me, but I've heard that they actually inject additional moisture to add weight or something along those lines.
I've heard that too. I think it depends on where you get your meat. Like if you're buying it like at the dollar store, that meat is definitely, and I'm not even joking, they have meat at the dollar store and it is ridiculously overpriced. And if you look at the ingredients, it is mostly water. Like they do inject that with water, and they'll sell you like an ounce of meat and they'll price it at 2 ounces because it includes water. And then they also sell it at a ridiculous upcharge. Anyway, but you want to put it in the pan with some oil and some butter. So the oil is going to protect the butter so it doesn't burn. Make sure your pan is hot before you put the oil in, and you'll notice the oil will kind of like shimmer a little, and then you throw that butter in there, and then let the butter melt for just a few seconds, and then you put the chicken in. And you want to wiggle that chicken around so that you know it's not sticking to the pan, and then you leave it for 5 minutes, flip 5 minutes, and then you take it off, put it on a plate, cover it with like a lid, like one of your cooking lids, for 5 minutes, and then it should be good. So that's it. I feel like I could talk a lot longer, but I don't want to like just spend the whole podcast talking about cooking chicken. I've tried to get good at it because chicken is an inexpensive protein and it's a lean protein. And so it's a pretty healthy thing to eat. And so that's why I focus so much time and energy in learning how to cook it well. But yeah, are you still there? You might be muted if you're talking right now. Saying water.
Water of the womb. Yeah.
That's interesting though, because it's like you said, it's the exact opposite of the initial. The way it's used is the exact opposite of the initial meaning.
And I think it's a good point to like, because I mean, people will say blood is thicker than water, but those I don't often think of those. That sort of like mentality is very strong. It's like a weak. You choose which bonds you keep and make. Yeah. And those bonds, like our autonomy, dictating those bonds is stronger than the ones that were thrust on us. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The last one I got here, Jack of all trades, master of none.
Okay.
The full quote is, Jack of all trades, master of none, though oftentimes better than master of one.
Okay, I have heard that.
Yeah. But the first one implies like you're very limited in your ability to do things. I've always considered myself like a jack of all trades, or I try to take enough knowledge to understand different trades, but I also try to master them, and I don't like that it's like it automatically implies that you can't master one because you're too spread out. I disagree with it in general, but the saying, the full context is saying that it's still often better than a master of one.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's the truth. Because there is some baseline knowledge you need to have in an area to be a master in that field. And in a specialization, you need to still have general knowledge about the area, is what I'm trying to say. But there is value to having someone who is a generalist and not a specialist in something.
Yeah.
And that they usually, I would think, management should be more of a generalist so that they at least understand the interconnecting, the connections between the different specializations so they can utilize employees better.
Yeah. No, I agree and with that, especially because with the way I've run into that recently where some people think they can do everything when it's not. It's so much better to match someone up with their skill set. And you can't really do that unless you understand a little bit about skill sets, the different ones out there.
Yeah. It's also the Dunning-Kruger effect.
What
Have you heard that one? That is the when someone has a small amount of knowledge, they tend to think that they know a lot more than they do. It's like,
okay. Yeah, Jacob and I have talked a lot about this actually.
Oh, well, the thing
I didn't
is
know that
it's
was what it was called.
It's not necessarily always true that someone who is, I think it comes into humility a little bit, because if you're humble, you're probably going to be immune to the Dunning-Kruger effect in a sense. But people that are just learning something, and it's probably something that has a lot of depth to it, that it would take years to fully grasp everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like a week into it and they've watched a bunch of YouTube videos and they are an expert. Basically every person online. Every person whoever makes a Twitter post is
Dunning-Kruger. I found I called someone out for this recently. And they were not happy with me, but I had began to teach them something that is somewhat intricate. And within the hour, they thought they were a master of it. When it's like, next to nothing about this. And you're doing okay to a degree with what I've given you. But me holding your hand while you walk is not the same as winning a triathlon.
Yeah.
It's not the same. I called them out, and they were embarrassed, but I need to work on the way I execute calling people out.
Yeah, I want to keep talking about this, but can we take a quick break?
Yeah, let's take a break. Was somewhat malicious.
Yeah. But anyway, I derailed. I was talking about chicken. And you were going to give me advice on how to wiggle, what I should do. Would I wiggle the chicken in the pan?
No, I was going to, something I've started doing when I cook things, right before I put the thing I want to cook in. So you have your oil, you have your butter in there. Hold on just a second. Sorry, I had to cough. Before I put the meat or the protein in there, I will put seasonings on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
So,
right. So like a cast iron thing.
Yeah, I guess it's similar to how that operates, but it doesn't have to be a cast iron pan. I put it in. My thought is it will cook it in a little bit, but that's where the bottom of the meat is where like you want the seasonings to be, right?
Yeah.
Depending on which side you're going to eat it from.
Yeah, I usually try to just, when I put it in the pan, if I hadn't already put seasoning on it, like if I do it before I put it in the pan, I'll do it on both sides.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just like put a little more than I would normally put on top of it when I first put it in.
Gotcha.
I haven't tried
And
putting it in the pan though. I should try that. I wonder how that would affect it.
well, I think putting it on the meat itself beforehand has the same effect. But if it's like eggs, and you season the eggs before you crack them, it doesn't really help.
Yeah. You
And that's
just
the protein that I've been cooking a lot of lately. So I salt the pan right before the egg goes in.
that makes a lot of sense for eggs cuz like if you were to buy a thing of a dozen eggs and then just open the little carton thing and sprinkle salt and be like I'm just pre-seasoning all these eggs, you're going to get confused looks from your significant other when they go to open it and they just see a bunch of dirt fall out of the egg carton.
I don't salt with dirt, but I know what you mean.
It'll look like dirt. They'll be like,
I
"Why
feel
are
like
our
you're
eggs so
misquoting me a
dirty?"
little bit, just like they did with Mary Antoinette. I always thought it was Marianne Toinette.
So you
Also,
thought one of her names was Toinette? That sounds like a name that I feel like someone's had that name before, but I can't think of anyone. Toinette.
Toinette, Marianne Toinette. Um, but are there any misquotes that you like? I've got a few written down that I.
Go in and give the ones you have. I'm gonna try to think of any.
So you've heard the term "money is the root of all evil,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's actually a misquote from the Bible, but the actual phrase is the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. So
okay,
instead of, I mean, you could just say, well, they shortened it, but in a way, they did take it out of context. The
yeah,
love of money is different than money itself.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's completely different because you can have money and not necessarily be evil.
Blood is thicker than water. Have you heard
I
that
have
phrase?
that means that you have a stronger bond with people you are related to. Is that what that
Yeah.
means?
Yeah, that's what but it's actually the original saying is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, which means the exact opposite. Like those you make commitments to, the people you choose, those bonds are stronger than the water of the womb, the people you're related to.
Yeah. Do
So
you
it,
think
it
you think they really thought it was water in the womb, like
the
H2O?
like well I don't know why they thought that or put it that way, but i I think
That's kind of
I think
funny to
it
me. We do say your water breaks when someone's going to have a baby and that happens.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we
I
still
mean it's
call it water even now.
what do you want it to be called, like birthing discharge or something? I
That's
like I
that
like
makes
water better.
that makes me uncomfortable. Yeah, water's better.
Let's just call it water
I've
for
come
now.
full circle. I think they're right in saying water.
Water of
Um,
the womb. um yeah.
that's
The other
interesting though, because it's the like you said, it's the exact opposite of the initial. The way it's used is the exact opposite of the initial meaning.
and I think that it's a good point to like, because I mean people will say blood is thicker than water, but those I don't often think of those, that sort of like mentality is very strong. It's like a weak, you choose which bonds you keep and make, and
Yeah,
those bonds, like our autonomy dictating those bonds, is stronger than the ones that were thrust on us. And that I don't know.
yeah,
Uh,
that makes sense.
Um, the last one I got here, Jack of all trades, master of none.
Okay,
Um, the full quote is Jack of all trades, master of none, though often times better than master of one.
okay, I have heard that.
Yeah. But
That
the first one implies like you're very limited in your ability to do things. I've always considered myself like a jack of all trades, or I try to take enough knowledge to understand different trades, but I also try to master them, and I don't like that it's like it automatically implies that you can't master one because you're too spread out. I disagree with it in general, but the saying, the full context is saying that it's still often better than a master of one.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's the truth. In because there is some baseline knowledge you need to have in an area to be a master in that field. In a specialization, you need to still have general knowledge about the area, is what I'm trying to say. But there is value to having someone who is a generalist and not a specialist in something.
Yeah.
And that they usually, I would think, management should be more of a generalist so that they at least understand the interconnecting, the connections between the different specializations so they can utilize employees better.
Yeah. No, that's I agree and with that, especially because with the way I've run into that recently where some people think they can do everything when it's not. It's so much better to match someone up with their skill set. And you can't really do that unless you understand a little bit about skill sets, the different ones out there.
Yeah. It's also the Dunning-Kruger effect.
What
Have you
is
heard that one? That
No.
is the when someone has a small amount of knowledge, they tend to think that they know a lot more than they do. It's like,
Okay. Yeah,
and it
Jacob and I have talked a lot about this actually.
oh well, the
I
thing
didn't know
is
that was what it was called.
it's not necessarily always true that someone who is, I think it comes into humility a little bit, because if you're humble, you're probably going to be immune to the Dunning-Kruger effect in a sense. But people that are just learning something, and it's probably something that has a lot of depth to it, that it would take
Yeah.
years to fully grasp everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like a week into it and they've watched a bunch of YouTube videos and they are an expert. Basically every person online. Every person
I've
whoever makes
run
a Twitter
into
post is
Dunning-Kruger. I found I called someone out for this recently, and they were not happy with me. But they, I had began to teach them something that is somewhat intricate, and within the hour, they thought they were a master of it. When it's like you know next to nothing about this, and you're doing okay to a degree with what I've given you. But me holding your hand while you walk is not the same as winning a triathlon.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not the same. And I called them out, and they were embarrassed. But I need to work on the way I execute calling people out.
Yeah, I want to keep talking about this, but can we take a quick break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Yeah. So that makes, let's see, 1, 2, 3. That was the third break because we had a technical issue break.
Oh.
And then we're gonna have another. So we're gonna have 4 breaks this episode. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's groundbreaking for us.
It is. But I wanted to say,
I bet IT is one of those fields where you run into that a lot.
Yeah, Dunning-Kruger all the time. And honestly, it's hard to. You have to check yourself too, because a lot of concepts in IT can be summarized very quickly. But there's usually like a whole history to why things are the way they are, and the history is the context that summary is based on. And if you miss like why network switching works the way it works and why the IP protocol is set up the way it is, you might miss some key information on like networking when you go to set up a router or something like that and misunderstand how to use it. But what I wanted to say, and I think I've talked about this person before, we had this employee that had watched some YouTube videos about API.
Yeah.
And she wanted to create APIs for our systems. And I probably had like 3 different meetings with her that were over an hour long, where I would try to explain to her that her way of going about this is not, it's not acceptable because she's going to break stuff. And the answer is no, because she would ask for like full administrative access to her systems, like to where she could do whatever she wanted. And she would put it to me like she was doing me a favor. She'd be like, and you can take credit for it. I don't care. I just want to make like this or that. And I'd tell her, like, I can tell you have some talent here. I can tell you've got drive here, but the answer is no. And here's why. And I'd try to explain to her that, like, while she may understand parts of it, this is a whole field. Development has specializations within it.
Yeah.
And she is acting like she can just develop these tools and things that are going to work perfectly. And I think in IT, the Dunning-Kruger effect is very dangerous because you can ruin some stuff. And that's kind of contrary to some of the core like principles of IT, because IT is such that you can break stuff and just put it back together because it's all virtual, right? You can ruin a system and then just re-image it.
Yeah.
Or you've
got a backup.
Yeah, you've got a backup. You can destroy software and then just reinstall it and everything should be fine. But so it's hard to explain to someone how there's a difference between the system itself that's not being used by, 200 people and a system that's being actively used by 200 people. Because if you break something and you cost the company, 2 hours to get things back up and running,
that's 400 hours.
Yeah, exactly. It's not insignificant. It's a huge cost, and you can't do that in a live system, especially. And yeah, I even offered to like set her up like her own little development system that she could play with, but she didn't want that. She was like, "No, I can do it. I can do it I just need full access to like do this." And I was like, "Oh man." It was hard because you don't want to tell someone. Yeah, you don't want to tell someone that they're not good enough, but it's, the fact of the matter is they don't understand that they don't know things. Like they don't know what they don't know. Yeah, and what's worse is they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. This sounds so much like her. With their becoming, and they when they sort of responded to what I told them about like being overly confident, they're like, well, that's just how I gain confidence, is by pretending to be confident. And I'm like, that's not how the world
yeah.
That doesn't do any good to be like, I'm an expert on something when you're not. Is there shame in like learning something or being at the bottom of a mountain and not saying I'm at the top of the mountain? I don't. It does. I don't fully get it. I think
there's
that part of my brain is missing.
There might be a weird generation thing going on, but I've felt this way where I feel like learning at work is unacceptable. At work, you are a professional and you do things perfectly because it's your job. But the fact of the matter is people don't work like that. Like most people, even if they're an accountant, like they might be learning the software that the company uses to do accounting and they don't know the software. So like they're learning even if they've been an accountant for 10 years.
Yeah.
They're still going to learn and make mistakes. I know that's different from building stairs because there's a huge safety issue there. So you kind of can't learn how to build stairs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not working with a lot of experienced people in different trades. Like I'm having to teach and learn a lot myself. So it's not I wish it were that I could lean on other people, but it also makes it more dangerous to pretend you know. In the similar way of what you're talking about with your IT systems, it's dangerous to pretend you know something when you don't in construction. It's far worse than being like, I don't know anything. Teach me. That's better than I know everything. Let me jump in and start doing stuff.
And how much more would you respect them if they came to you and said, hey, I'm supposed to build these stairs. I've done it before, but I haven't done it enough to really, I need some supervision in doing it.
I don't know what I'd do with that. Because that's the appropriate way to handle something. And that's not what I'm going.
Now, what if they came to you and said, what is this? And they're holding a hammer in their hand. And they're like, look, I might have exaggerated on my resume.
I'd say, well, that's a framing hammer, or that's a brick hammer, or that's a finish hammer. Whatever specific type of hammer.
Oh, see, I thought there was one type of hammer. So
see, yeah,
Dunning-Kruger as far as hammers go, because I have 3 hammers in my house, and they're all the same kind.
I would have to let them go over this next break.
Yeah, are they now that the break's over, did you actually let them go over that break? That was a long break.
I got halfway through the email and I ran out of time. I didn't know what to say.
I have something really important to talk to you about, and then don't finish the email and hit send. And then don't respond until, Monday
morning at like 9 o'clock.
And just say, oh, never mind. How to stress someone out.
Yeah. I like that.
I've gotten...
start doing that.
Because IT is in every department, essentially. Like, I'll get emails from our HR director saying, come meet me in my office. I'm sitting with the CEO, right? And that's... like, even though I know it's not like me being let go or something, it's still kind of like, oh, what is going on? Because it doesn't give me any information as to what's happening. All I know is I'm going into a closed meeting with HR and the CEO.
Yeah.
Like, oh no. Anyway, how to stress people out 101.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're hosting. I'm not.
Yeah, so I'm supposed to thank the listeners, and I do want to thank them, so I will. Just as soon as I thank you, listeners. Did we have a winner? I'm the host, but I wanted to put it on you.
Yeah, I think we do have a winner.
Did you even come up with a misused phrase?
No, I did not. I was thinking about how Mark Twain, like, so many quotes are attributed to him but are not. He didn't have anything to do with them.
Oh yeah. So you took misquotes as like the other way of like,
yeah, not misunderstanding a quote, but
well, I think this week Marianne won because she had the most.
Marianne, middle name Toinette. What's her last name? Cake. Her last name is Marianne Toinette Cake. Okay. Yeah.
Congratulations, Marianne.
Marianne.
Anyways, we're findable online at brothertimepod.com, where you they rate and review there, or do people do that
on any podcast
like Spotify
app?
Yeah, like Spotify. What else is there for podcast apps?
Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts.
Is it Applecast or is it iCast for Apple?
I think if you just type any combination of that into the internet, it'll come back and say, please be more specific. And so that probably won't work. I don't know. It'll probably get you there.
Yeah, it'll get you on your way. Anyways, we're also on Facebook, but I think you want people to find us at brothertimepod.com.
Yep, brothertimepod.com.
All right. Good.